The GOP is standing on an ocean of blood. Check it out, leave your comments, ding the bell, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel. I wanted to just start out with basically, my rant from Hartmann Report this morning, which I really think that this is increasingly, this is who we are. And it's a real tragedy that the Republican Party over 40 years has reshaped America. We no longer trust our government. We no longer are one for all and all for one. We're no longer, my brother's keeper kind of thing. We no longer care for each other or take care of each other. Instead, we've been infected with this bizarre libertarian notion of, freedom and individual liberty and all this kind of stuff, which basically is code for, the billionaires feed us this stuff, right? And it's basically code for don't raise my taxes if I'm a billionaire. And it's killing us. And probably the best example of how it's killing us now is guns. Ronald Reagan plagiarized John Kennedy, who quoted Winthrop, John Winthrop, one of the Pilgrim founders, as I recall, who talked about America being that idealistic city on a hill, and then Reagan added the word shining to it. I think that we could now change that word to armed encampment. We're no longer a city on a hill. We are a fortress, with guns sticking out everywhere. In fact, Republicans in the House, the Texas House of Representatives, just passed a so-called constitutional carry law that would allow anyone over 21 to carry a weapon, hidden or not, concealed or not, permit or not, experienced or not. Democrats tried to introduce a rider that said, okay, fine, everybody can carry a gun unless they're a domestic terrorist, or unless they're a white supremacist, or unless they've engaged in domestic violence. And the Republicans voted that down. I mean, this is how bizarre it's gotten. The whole city on a hill thing used to be that, when John Kennedy used that phrase, it was, we are what other countries want to be. We are what they want to emulate. And isn't that a marvelous thing? I mean, isn't that how it should be? But tragically, apparently, yeah, there are countries that want to emulate us. Jair Bolsonaro, the strongman fascist who runs Brazil, has said, we need to be just like America. We're number 2 in COVID deaths. We don't do squat about COVID. Hey, just get back to work, buddy. And so that's going on. And now with guns, he's saying he wants Brazil to be just like America. He wants everybody to have a gun. An armed society is a polite society, don't you know? Right. Last week in Indianapolis, we had another mass shooter. I mean, we've had 147 mass shootings now since the beginning of this year. That's a 73% increase over the previous year. And the one in Indianapolis, his mother had contacted the police and said that she was pretty sure he was going to commit suicide by cop. They came by the house and they took away his shotgun. What did he do? He went out and bought a couple of high-powered assault weapons. I mean, it's America. You want a gun, you can get a gun. Right? It's just that simple. Even if you live someplace where you can't get a gun, you just drive 20 miles. It's this is the problem Chicago has. All these folks in Chicago, yeah, there's gun laws in Chicago, and you hear these right-wingers going, well, the gun laws in Chicago aren't doing much good. Well, you go right to the edge of Chicago, which is the border with Indiana. You cross the border, and what do you see? Literally blocks filled with gun shops. And some of them, and regular gun, events, gun, I don't know what you would call them. But, gun parties or open air shows, selling opportunities. And, where they don't have to do background checks or anything. Psychologists are now referring to our gun deaths, 147 mass shootings now in the first, 4 months of the year. They're referring to this as a contagion. And you've got, Lauren Boebert, or Bobbert, or however she says her name, with all of her wisdom and training, saying that, Anthony Fauci is calling this a public health emergency. What do guns have to do with public health? Well, it's one of the leading causes of death in America. That is public health. Meanwhile, Joe Biden, President Biden and the Democrats, they just proposed legislation. I mean, there's literally legislation. I don't recall if it has passed the House yet or if it's supposed to this week, that would limit magazines to 10 rounds. I mean, how many rounds do you need to take down a deer? If you're shooting ducks, you can only use 3. It's about sportsmanship, right? But the Republicans are going, 10 rounds? That ain't enough. You might need 100 rounds. After all, if you got to take down your tyrannical government because that government is trying to give health care to everybody and pay off student debts and raise taxes on billionaires, we can't have tyranny like that. You got to have 100-round guns. For the 18 years I've been doing this show, I have been saying that at the very least, as a starting point, something every American can understand and isn't going to confuse anybody, is let's get the DMV involved. Let's just register guns, license guns or gun owners, and insure gun owners the same way we do cars. And you've heard this rant enough times that I'm not even going to repeat it here. But Stephen Colbert came out and said this over the weekend. He said, why don't you just license cars, guns like cars? And, hopefully more celebrities will get with the program and say, hey, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Let's do that. I mean, this is nowhere near as draconian as what Australia and most of Europe have done. But it's a start, and it's a start that every American could understand. Our country was created on a set of values and ideals. Obviously, we didn't act them out. We fought a civil war over those values and ideals. We've been fighting a cold civil war ever since. But hey, every century we get a little bit better. And I think, frankly, every generation we get a little bit better. I think it's time to recapture John Kennedy's idealism and make America a shining city on a hill that countries want to emulate, not because we're covered in blood, but because we're leading the world in positive things like education or health care or science.